So now the next section of that conclusion to Khenpo Kunpal's commentary on the brief commentary on Gongchik. So this section, it says, describing this text and its compiler. So then this text, referring to Gongchik, not the commentary, but this is now describing Gongchik and who compiled Gongchik, meaning Sherab Jungme. So let's look. Jigten Sumgun is not deluded in terms of the uncommon resultant Vajrayana, which is the teachings of the sublime essence, the sage's vast teachings, the common causal vehicle of characteristics, and the commentaries on the Buddha's view. So here are different ways of categorizing the Buddha's teachings. So there is the uncommon resultant teachings, meaning the teachings that particularly describe and work with the result, the fruit of practice. So this is sometimes called the resultant vehicle, the vehicle that takes the result. The result is Buddhahood, that takes Buddhahood and turns the result into a system, a path for achieving the result. So this is why sometimes secret mantra of Vajrayana is called the resultant, the fruition vehicle. Then in contrast, the other teachings, the non-Vajrayana teachings, are called the causal vehicles. The causal vehicle. So here it says, Jigten Sumgun knows clearly the resultant vehicle Vajrayana teachings and the vast teachings, which is the common causal vehicle of characteristics. So non-Vajrayana teachings are sometimes called the vehicle of characteristics, meaning the various characteristics are taught there. Whereas the Vajrayana is the essence, so the inside and the outside, the esoteric and the exoteric. And also, he is not ignorant of the commentaries of the Buddha's teachings by all the great Indian masters. So he knows all of this. Thus, he taught the Vajra statements in the center of his retinue, proclaiming them with a fearless lion's voice, born only by the valid cognition that sees the true meaning. So meaning, Jigten Sumgun sees directly the truth and the reality state. And so from that place, from that position, roars the lion's roar. Lion's roar is basically a poetic way of saying the way a Buddha teaches. The Buddha teaches with a lion's roar. Since the opponent dry intellectuals, so now, those who only are intellectually educated and intellectually based, since these are the opponents, right? Since the opponents, these dry intellectuals who are adversaries of the Dharma, the mean fox, group of foxes, in contrast to lion, are not able to subdue these Vajra statements, Sherab Jungme is formidable and thus fearless like a poised snow lion on a mountain peak. Here I'm not sure, if it should be Sherab Jungme. It seems that from the context, it should be referring still to Jigten Sumgun. Jigten Sumgun is formidable and thus fearless like a poised snow lion on a mountain peak. The Supreme Jigten Sumgun excellently taught this unique approach to the Dharma to a group of like-minded ones who were suitable recipients of the profound topics, and to various tameable beings without any mix-up, without any confusion, according to the capacities of their respective constitutions and faculties. So Buddha Jigten Sumgön taught, so this Gongchik constitute kind of like his most unique teachings. But then beyond these, he taught many he gave many other teachings. Some of those are more suited to his listeners than these essence teachings. But he taught both to them without being confused about who needs what. Thus, again here it says, the translator says it's Sherab Jungme, but I don't know. Here maybe it's still Jigten Sumgön. But thus, whoever it is, whether Jigten Sumgön or the compiler, Sherab Jungme, fully distinguish between the particularities of the ordinary, common, and the supreme, uncommon, unique Dharma teachings, and with a pleasant, melodious voice, he proclaimed this great message of the sacred Dharma like thunder in the 10 directions. I think it's still talking about Jigten Sumgön. Thus, these teachings are of a profound nature in terms of the great equality, the unity of wisdom and absolute space. Absolute space, in contrast to ordinary space, is talking about emptiness. Not literal space, but the lack of fixity, the lack of essences, and the wisdom that realizes that. So that is the unity of wisdom and absolute space, which is also the absolute space of phenomena, free from all elaborations. So emptiness is not just emptiness of you and me, but the emptiness that is also the emptiness of all phenomena. And they are of a vast nature in terms of the unceasing dependent origination of infallible causes and results. But this emptiness is not just mere emptiness. This emptiness also makes it possible for the dependent origination of cause and result without mistake. Cause and effect, karmic cause and effect works flawlessly, without any mistake, within this lack of inherent existence, within emptiness. Jigten Sumgön taught these inconceivably many approaches to the Dharma, adorned with pith instructions on many profound key points. This unsurpassable intention, Gong of Gongchik, is translated here as intention, the Gongpa. Gongpa can also mean realization. So I think it's really a combination of both realization and intention. Realization is the realization that Jigten Sumgön achieved, that all Buddhas achieve, realization of the complete reality of all things. Then from that realization, what they teach, what's behind what they teach and why they teach is the intention. The intention, in this sense, is the intention to free all beings from suffering and confusion. So Gongpa has these two, can have both these two meanings. So this unsurpassable intention, which is extensive and profound, like a great, vast, and deep ocean. From that, I, the beggar monk, Sherab Jungme, from that, I, the beggar monk Sherab Jungme, the Dharma heir of Jigten Sumgön, wrote these words that summarize his teachings as merely a drop of water on the tip of a hair, whose tip has been split into hundreds of pieces. So the tip of a tip of 100 tips, or a tip that has been divided into 100 part, a tip of that one tip. So just a little bit of the vastness, very Tibetan in its style of expressing humility. So I think, further up where we read, where the translator provided these Sherab June. I think there is Sherab June talking about Jigten Sungmen. Only now Sherab June is talking about himself. From that great and extensive ocean of teachings that Jigten Sungmen has taught, from that I, a beggar monk called Sherab June, who is the Dharma heir of Jigten Sungmen, wrote these words that summarize his teachings as merely a drop of water on the tip of a hair whose tip has been split into hundreds of pieces. It is written with an altruistic intention so that the second victorious one, Jigten Sungmen is also called the second Buddha by his disciples. So that the second Buddha's unequaled tradition shall not decline and future followers may practice it. So many of Jigten Sungmen's disciples in his lifetime really and truly considered Jigten Sungmen to be fully enlightened, just like Buddha Shakyamuni. And that perhaps even kind of scandalized some people. Because it is one thing to say, think of your guru as complete and perfect Buddha, as in trained to relate and to see your guru and actually all anyone and everyone who has anything to teach you that can lead to an end to suffering. You should think that this is actually the Buddha himself, Buddha Shakyamuni himself, that is teaching you. Why you should think this way, why you should train this way, is so that you can really take those teachings to heart and have full confidence and practice them. And so it's one thing to say, you should train to relate to the sources of Dharma in this way. It's another thing to say, no, literally, he is at the same level as Buddha Shakyamuni. But it seems like during Jigten Sungmen's lifetime, many of his disciples saw him as a Buddha. So one example is that these early images, statues of Jigten Sungmen that were made in his lifetime. And so I've mentioned this before, even though, yes, in this 11th, 12th century, you have to remember in 11th, 12th century in Tibet, resources are very limited, and also craftsmen who have the ability to craft statues and workshops, they are rare. They were rare. But Jigten Sungmen, in order to honor his teacher, to help his disciples accumulate merit, when his teacher passed away, Pamudrupa, Jigten Sungmen used all the offerings that Jigten Sungmen's disciples gave him, all the material offerings. Of course, he used, for the most, first and foremost, Jigten Sungmen received so much offerings, it is said, from his disciples, that he used those offerings to support all the monks and all the practitioners that have gathered around him. He provided them with provisions. So these lamas, have a lot of responsibilities. Also, when you become a teacher like this, other people come to you from other places and say, can you help me? I have 50 monks to feed over there. I have this 50 nuns over here to take care of. Can you, oh great Lama, help me out? It was like that. It's still like this now. Once people know, oh, you have people following you, you have people making offerings to you, then they will come. Oh, please, I have this I need to do. Oh, please, I have that I need to do. Can you help? So Jigten Sumgön had many disciples who had a lot of wealth. And there's one disciple who eventually, his family was from central Tibet. His family is the Nyo family, and spelled as Nyo. The O has an umlaut, Nyo, Nyo, the Nyo family. Nyo family, during Jigten Sumgön's time, Nyo family was a very influential aristocratic family in central Tibet. Some accounts say that they were sort of like the landlord to the whole Lhasa area, the capital area. They own a lot of land. Some even describing them as sort of like governor of. I'm not very clear as to the exact position of this family. Suffice to say that it's one of the wealthiest aristocratic family. So the son, the son, the main kind of like person in this family, became a disciple of Jigten Sumgön. I think after he was married and everything. So later he became a monk. Then it is said that Jigten Sumgön sent him to many places, and finally he settled, or at least he established an outpost of disciples in what is today Bhutan. So Nyo, his name is Nyo, as in the family name. Gyalwa Lanangpa. Gyalwa is like a title for, like, the victorious one. Gyalwa Lanangpa. So they call him Lanangpa, of the Nyo family. So it's said that Nyo Gyalwa Lanangpa, when he was in Bhutan, on one occasion when he was arranging for all these offerings to offer to his teacher, Gyalpa Jigten Sumgön, in central Tibet. So Bhutan is basically southern Tibet at that time. So it's said that when Nyo Gyalwa Lanangpa was sending offerings, so he had a caravan of yaks, a caravan of yaks carrying all the offerings. So they said that he gave so much offerings to his teacher that when the first yak carrying those offerings had arrived in central Tibet, in Drigung, the last yak has not left Bhutan yet. Such a long caravan, So all these offerings, Jigten Sumgön basically used to feed and provide for all his followers. Now, Jigten Sumgön didn't really build monasteries the way today we think of monasteries, big buildings. He didn't do that. He did use also the offerings to restore, like Samye Monastery, and like important buildings in the history of Tibetan Buddhism. He did. He also used his offerings to support the rebuilding of his teacher's community that declined very sharply after Jigten Sumgön, or after his teacher passed away, after Jigten Sumgön left. Pamudrupa's community also declined very sharply. Everybody left, and that place almost fully abandoned. Also, Pamudrupa also did not build monasteries the way we think of monasteries. These early Kagyupas were mostly the equivalent of what today we would call forest communities. Little huts, and cabins, When they gathered in the open space. They gave teachings, and then people went back to their own little cabins and practice. Anyway, when Pomodripa passed away, Jigten Sumgön spent a lot of these resources to build a magnificent stupa. The stupa that he built for his teacher is not like the stupa we know today. Instead, this is basically like 7 to 8 stories high, and each level are big and small statues of various deities. So it's like a piled up structure of different deities, from the offering deities, the offering gods and goddesses, to the 4 kings, the attendants of the 4 heavenly kings, to different Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Devas, Idams, Gurus, all the way. The whole structure has about 2,000 magnificent, high-quality bronze statues. Today, if you Google Densatil, 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 this is Pomodripa's monastery, Densatil bronze statues. You can see the quality of these statues, of this stupa. Magnificent. About 10 years ago, Asia Society in New York had an amazing exhibition of these Densatil bronze statues that Jigten Sumgön had Nepali and Chinese statue makers come to central Tibet in the 12th century to build this stupa, make these statues. At that time in Asia Society in New York, I was the person that they contacted Asia Society to arrange for a big sand mandala to be built during the opening of this exhibition. I also invited His Holiness the Drigong Kyabgön to inaugurate the exhibition. So we made a big sand mandala. There were 6 of us, I think, over a week, I think. Anyway, back to Jigten Sumgön, right? So because these craftsmen that he brought to central Tibet, the Nepali and the Chinese craftsmen that he brought to central Tibet to build his guru's stupa, because they were around, so Jigten Sumgön had access to people with skill and ability to make statues. Then when Jigten Sumgön sent his disciples, so what Jigten Sumgön did when disciples came to him, it said that at the height of the gathering there were 525,000 people. Whether you want to literally believe in that number or not, I leave it to you. Gathered in the Drigong area. I think 50,000 is really a lot. Many disciples. But one of the things that he frequently did was he would send his disciples off. After he is confident that they have stabilized their practice, receive all the instructions they need, he will say to them, now you go into retreat. Go into this sacred mountain here, sacred mountain there, far, far away. In fact, basically telling them, no need to come back to me anymore. Go. So these disciples said, but we cannot bear to be separated from you. So then he allowed them to make statues of him. And he blessed those statues. And each of them probably that left, he would give this and say, now you have me. If having me in your mind, in your heart, in the form of the teachings is not enough, okay, here, take this physical me, these statues, take this physical me and go. So these statues, some of them survive to the present day. Some of them survive to the present day. And when you look at those statues done in the 12th century, so the hands, it is said that one of the 32 signs of Buddhas is that they have a wheel, a dharma wheel, like a birthmark on the insides of their palms and the insides of the soles of their feet. They are like birthmarks in the shape of 1,000 spoke wheel. When you look at Jigten Sumgön statues done in when Jigten Sumgön was alive, you will find that they include those wheels. You don't see this in statues of other great lamas from that period, because I think at that time, people still kind of like, as much as tremendous emphasis in Vajrayana to think of your guru as Buddha, I think people back then still a little bit shy to so explicitly say that my guru is Buddha. But Jigten Sumgön's disciples apparently, no shyness there. They were so confident what they have in their midst was a Buddha. So these statues have this. They made these statues with the mark on the hands and on the feet. Yeah. Anyway, another digression. Then the third part, dedicating the merit of this for the benefit of the teachings and of beings. Now, Sherab Jungne's prayer symbolized by this virtue of completely pure benevolence when writing down this single intention, entirely white like a snow mountain that is free from stains, Sherab Jungne gathered all the collected virtue that he and others have accumulated in the 3 times and also have innately. And the virtue that we have innately is Buddha nature. So that as long as the ocean of beings exists, the precious teachings of the victorious one in general, meaning the Buddha Shakyamuni in general, those teachings in general, and the teachings of Ratnashri in particular. And Ratnashri is the Dharma name of Jigten Sumgön, may flourish and spread everywhere through study and practice in the 10 directions. May all the worldly beings be completely free from the afflictive and cognitive obscurations, such as ignorance, which is the root of all suffering without exception, and delusion, which is confusion about what to adopt and abandon. May they before long swiftly attain the Dharmakaya, the wisdom of Buddhahood, with the 2 benefits perfected, benefiting self, benefiting others. Thus I, now Khenpo Kunpal is referring to himself, thus I, due to immediate needs, have here made a word-by-word commentary to the verses composed by Venerable Gongchik Conclusion, based on the Vajra statements written down by Jing'a Sherab Jungne. So, Sherab Jungne compiled the initial statements, the Vajra statements. Then, way further down the road, one of the throne holders of Drigong, Gongchik Conclusion, kind of edited those Vajra statements. So Khenpo Kunpal is telling us that he used the addition of the Vajra statements that were edited by Chinle Namgyal. Trilay Namgyal, sorry, wasn't one of the throne holders, but he was one of the teachers of one of the throne holders. Lord Trilay Namgyal was an important Drigung Kagyu master in Eastern Tibet. So Khenpo Kunpal is telling us which edition of the Vajra statements that he relied on. So then concluding verses, I did not write this for the sake of gain, nor for the sake of fame. I do not see it as greatly beneficial, and it was also not for the sake of passing time. What was it for? The three foundations, which are a great pillar of veneration for gods and humans, are beautifully adorned like never before with the one and only pt.2 monastery. So the three foundations are referring to the three elements or foundations of monastic life. And so the footnote here tells us the three important ceremonies in the monastic life: the restoration and purification of monastic vows, done twice a month on the new moon and full moon; the summer retreat, which is now called the Varsa or Yarine; and the ending ritual of the summer retreat, which is at the end of the summer retreat. These three. So he says, what is this for? He says, it is for, not yet, go further down, which is a garland of jewels of study and practice, blazing with fame in the world. Now, the main point. When Botru Donga Tempe Nima's generation of bodhicitta and agreement to teach the single intention came to full fruition there, I composed this commentary as a quickly needed aid to ease its teaching and study. Since I did it with a completely pure motivation, how would it be suitable for anyone to discard it? So basically here, Khenpo Kunpal is saying, I composed this because my student, Tempe Nima, was asked to teach this text. And so then he asked me to provide him with some useful kind of notes for him to teach. And so he said, then I composed this, and this is the reason why. In this manner, to the Drigung teachings and those who uphold them in all directions and times, I, a beggar with altruistic intention, fold my hands and request that the Father's disciples uphold the Father's teachings. For this reason, how could they not be pleased by turning their delighted eyes to it? So Khenpo Kunpal is an outsider, meaning he was a great teacher in the Nyingma tradition. And his disciple, of course, then was also from the Nyingma tradition, but his disciple was invited to go to the seminary that was then recently established by the previous Drigung Kyabgon Chesang in Tibet. And so because that disciple was there to teach the 13 classical Indian Buddhist texts. So while there, his Drigung students asked their teacher, even though their teacher is from the Nyingma tradition, they asked him, could you teach us this important text from the Drigung tradition? So Khenpo Kunpal is here sort of pleading with to show, this is not to show, but this is like his non-sectarian attitude. He's saying to the Drigung disciples, he said, hey, those of you who are the heirs of Kyopa's teachings, Kyopa Jigten Sungyen's teaching, please, don't neglect this. Continuing, this greatly stable and vast, profound subject, the single intention, does not contradict any of the teaching traditions of the Buddha. the victorious one, or the sutra and mantra traditions, and the essential root of the teachings, which is the Vinaya teachings that are like a sun, which is the monastic vows. Sherab Jungne established the law that the fearless great lion roar must not be taught with a voice like a fox, which does not distinguish between pure and impure. So then he said, Sherab Jungne has warned, have said, do not teach this single intention, compromising its lion's roar by barking around, yapping around like foxes. That means Sherab Jungne says, either don't teach or teach this. If you're going to teach this, do not fear, highlighting its unique features. Even if you think other people might criticize it for its unique views, Sherab Jungne says, if you're going to teach it like a lion, like a lion's roar. Since I took the scriptures and reasoning of its own Drigong commentaries as the main basis for this, I did not compose it out of self-importance. So Khenpo Kunpal says, I did not compose this based on my own ideas. I consulted the traditional Drigong commentaries. It's his way of saying, I did not insert my own biases, my own education of my own system, the Nyingma system. He says, I did not do that. I mainly wrote this by consulting the Drigong tradition. However, I did explain a little. He also admit, although I did add some of my own explanation, and therefore, for whatever errors my childish mind has committed due to being overpowered by delusion, I beseech the three roots, the Guru, the Idams, and the Dharmapalas, please grant me your forbearance and purification for any mistakes that, for any of my own biases that have gone into this. Please forgive me. Since my completely pure motivation is without any faults, therefore this is virtuous. Symbolized by this virtue, I gather all virtues of myself and others and dedicate them to the upholding of the teachings of the victorious one through study and practice in all lands where space pervades, and to establishing all beings without exception in supreme awakening. So now he's dedicating merit, the merit of having composed this text. And so he says, I know my motivation is pure. Now, in executing this, in carrying this out, there may have been some mistakes that I have done. But insofar as my motivation, I'm purely motivated by wanting to support the Drigong tradition, to help Drigong disciples learn about their unique heritage. So then he says, now I dedicate this merit. From the absolute space, may all the victorious ones who are the three roots, with melodious voices of Brahma, through the assistance of virtuous auspiciousness, bestow on us amazing signs that fill the sky and appear to worldly beings. I request the Guru, who is the three roots, and the ocean of victorious ones to grant this here and now. Concerning the author of this clarification of the sacred Dharma, the single intention, treasury of essential scriptures and reasoning, meaning this commentary, I was touched by the lotus feet of many scholar practitioners, such as the second victorious one, Petru Rinpoche, his own teacher, Petru Rinpoche, who is the author of this famous book that has been translated into English called Words of My Perfect Teacher. And Petru Rinpoche also famously taught Shantideva's Bodhicayavatara all over Tibet. Before Petru Rinpoche, this text mostly only studied by scholar monks in seminaries. But Petru Rinpoche went everywhere teaching Shantideva to everyone who wants to listen to those teachings. So Khenpo Kunpal is one of the main disciples of Petru Rinpoche. And I was taken especially close care of by the loving Ogyen Tenzin Norbu, Lord of the Mandala, unequaled in kindness, the great master of learning, purity, and accomplishment. Another of his teachers. I, who am called Samantabhadra Dhammakirti, that is Khenpo Kunpal's formal name in Sanskrit, the worst of all his lowest students, an empty beggar, a guise of a monk of Shakyamuni, a useless one, completed this commentary in the 1560-year cycle, which is called Virtue Producer in the male water tiger year. So 1902, basically, in the year 1902. In the Purva Saddha month, the 6th month of the Tibetan calendar, on the virtuous date when the Lord of Sages first turned the wheel of Dharma. So during Chokur Duchen, which recently occurred, Chokur Duchen, the turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is on the 4th day of the 6th Tibetan month. At a solitary mountain retreat place, based on the teachings of Jingna Sherab Jungne and Rizing Chodra. So he says, he primarily looked at Dhammakirti, Drikung Dhammakirti's commentaries. Then, of course, the root verses of Jingna Sherab Jungne. May this be a cause for the victorious Drigungpa's teachings to spread and flourish in the 10 directions. May it be victorious. Finito. Done. So, just very briefly going over this quickly. Same thing, as Khenpo Kunpal says, mostly try to explain this according to Jigten Sungren's unique tradition, but many times probably inserted my own kind of ideas and perhaps confusion, but with a pure enough, I hope, motivation. There is some merit to this. So then we dedicate, and likewise for you who have so diligently attended these teachings, this interdependence that we have, we should dedicate this merit to all beings everywhere. And particularly also dedicating merit to the flourishing of this set of teachings, the Gongchik, so that it can be a source of benefit to those who have the right connection to it, the right karma to it. As I say, I'm going to continue our Monday to Friday classes till the end of this month before I leave for Nepal and India. So we will continue, except that this Monday we will not have class. I need to be on the road for a quick visit to some people out of town. So Monday we won't have class. But otherwise, we will continue exactly other than the usual practice that we do at the beginning of class. What we will do in the second part, not exactly decided yet. So it will be a surprise. We'll figure out. So now let's do dedication on page 10 of the opening text. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Veeras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dhakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us who harm, and those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi by the power of this vast root of virtue. May we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta. May I become a virtuous spiritual friend with good qualities, limitless as space. May I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay, everyone, you all have a good weekend.